There are over 100 animations in PowerPoint, and like a lot of things in PowerPoint, they've got a bad name, and rightly so. Who needs to see things bouncing and spinning and flipping and zooming in and zooming out? In fact, you might ask the question, why use animations at all? Well, actually, there's one very good reason, and that is you're saying one thing at a time in a sequence. So really, realistically, you should show one thing at a time more often than not. And when you do it right, animations, they kind of give you two things. First of all, they're very elegant, as we'll see in some of these examples, visually elegant. And secondly, and more importantly, they're cognitively intuitive. They take you through the visual in an intuitive way. They guide your understanding of what it is that you're seeing. So we're going to look at 4 animations. They're the only 4 I ever really use. In fact, you could probably get away with the first 3 of these. But the 4 we're going to look at are appear, fade in, wipe, and fly in from the side or from the top or wherever it is. And they do slightly different things, but it's the blend that makes them effective. So for example, you might have something appearing slowly, like a complicated picture you draw slowly, and then label, fade in and then appear, fade in and appear. So it gives you, if you like, 2 layers of information. The first layer is the visual, the second layer is the label related to that visual. So they can work together very well that way. Wipe is slightly different. Wipe shows you direction, it shows you flow, it shows you logic. So it's very good for showing the connections between things. And people like to see stuff drawn on the screen. It's a very effective way of taking them on a visual journey. And they're very easy to do in case you've never done one before. You just go to the animations menu at the top and you select the one you want, and then you maybe set the timing to make it longer or shorter. And in the case of something like wipe, the direction in which it comes from. So using these, where can they be used really effectively? Well, one place is in graphs. Graphs are lethal. People put up a graph like they put up a photograph, and they point at it and say, as the graph clearly shows. And graphs rarely clearly show anything. You've got to explain how they work to the viewer. First of all, this is where your animations are brilliant, because they can guide you in steps to understand the logic of the graph. Then when you see the data on the graph, you can understand what it means much more easily. So let's take an example. We have a graph we want to draw. We put our title in at the top and explain why we're drawing this graph, and then we wipe in our axes like that, and we label each one of them to explain the units and what each one is plotting. Then we maybe put a point where we want to draw our first point, just to explain where did that come from, what was the logic, how do we collect our data. Then we make all of those points appear together to show the full data set. Then we have our line fit to those points to get our final graph. And then at this stage, having understood where the graph means, we can introduce other plots on top of that. Look at last year's graph or last year's figures or a different set of experimental results. And now that you understand in steps how that graph works, when you see the full thing and these comparative examples, you can start to use your visual senses to make inferences. And then maybe earlier in the presentation you had 3 examples, let's say 3 different forms of transport, and you introduced and explained those and showed some images. Now you can make those images appear in your graph so that they show you what each of those lines refers to. You can link, in other words, the concrete examples, the visual examples, to the abstract data in the graph and make further connections. All of this is greatly enhanced by the use of animations to introduce things in steps and in an intuitive, easily drawn, easily shown kind of a way. So I would say use animations in a way that enhances your visual logic. Use very few of them. I think 3 in fact is all you really need, and use them in a way that takes the audience on a visual journey. And really they can be very effective when done that way, and they can add a lot of value to your presentations. That said, I couldn't in all good conscience not finish this particular video with a wacky example. So with that, I say good luck.